One of our missions, I thought, we'd kind of go through and talk a little bit about, what we're trying to do. And one of the things that we're trying to do here is put you in control. We named the program, It's Your Estate. And what we meant by that is it's not your children's estate, it's not your advisor's estate, and even between spouses, there's each one controls 50% of the estate. And so the idea is to have control. And the studies have shown that people who are in control live longer and happier lives. So that's one of our goals. I hope with the knowledge for the past 7-8 weeks that we've been able to do some of that. Two is that this is the deaf business. And what I mean by that is that there's an entire industry from CPAs to attorneys to morticians to private fiduciaries to corporate fiduciaries to appraisers. It's an entire industry. And, the thing about it is that, how when you get your MBA, whether it's from Harvard or from wherever, one of the things they teach you is that to grab market share for your product. Well, in the deaf business, we don't have to worry about that. Because it happens to all of us. And so it's major. And the thing of it is that we only get a chance to die once. And consequently, there's not a lot of experience you can gather from that. And so the hope is that we have exposed you to some ethical and competent advisors that have a variety of some different skills, a variety of different ways that they charge for their services. And it gives you in a sense that there's a business side to the advisory business, and of course the counseling and the legal advice to the business. So we ask each one of the speakers to have completed an Ask First form, and we talked about their fees. And hopefully when you choose your advisors, you will do the same. I think one of the most beneficial things that we put in the packet is that Ask First form. And we recommend highly anyone that you speak with who's going to be talking about your money or your estate, you ought to know at least the basics that are recommended there on that Ask First form. Last but not least, we encourage tax-wise charitable giving. This program just wouldn't be possible without charitable organizations being the sponsor. One of the most expensive things about marketing is trying to get the word out that these programs are available. And through the charitable organizations, SalCal on public television, and the Heart Association sending out flyers and doing all the printing of all the photocopying, it's feasible for us to put this program together. It's my philosophy that giving to an organization, you don't get a toaster in return usually. There is just a psychic reward that's about the fact of feeling good about giving. And so I'm really pleased that the charitable organizations are kind of giving back through the sponsorship of this program. I don't know of another program that has the rules that we do on workshops or on seminars when we're talking about money and education. Hopefully that we could spread this kind of a program around across the country, because I think it's needed. Financial illiteracy is rampant. I was listening to NPR this morning, and they were saying that, the The pension plans have gone away. You'll never see pension plans again. It's all going to be 401ks. And so there's going to be more need for education regarding finances and estate planning. What we talked about in the past kind of 8 weeks is what documents do we need? And the basic documents are the will, the durable power of attorney, the advanced health care directive, and the living trust. And they're the easy part all about estate planning. They have rules, and there's vocabulary and terminology to learn when we're talking about this. But, what complicates everything is your life. And we're going to see some of the case studies today of how this gets to be a little bit more difficult. We got to deal with your life. We got to deal with your spouse's life. We got to deal with your children's lives. We got to deal with your grandchildren's lives. By the way, the grandchildren are of course, the hope. There are 3 places that your money can go to. Your family, IRS, and philanthropy. Those are the only 3 choices, essentially. And a lot of times what we like to think is that you have a conscious choice. You could pay the IRS, or you could support local charities. But in order to support the local charities, it's not automatic. You have to do something. And the doing something requires you to understand kind of this and the documents and the rules. And it's not easy. Just trying to figure out life is difficult. There was this weekend, the Monty Python's The Meaning of Life was on again, and I watched it and I go, God, is that gross. If you haven't seen it, it's pretty good, but a little different. Okay. So what I thought we'd do is that we handed out the case study, and what we'll do is we'll have a review of a real life situation. The individuals who have volunteered to give me their information, I don't know who they are. If they're in the room, I apologize up front for making some assumptions because we haven't had a dialogue. They just handed me a 7-page planning survey, and from that planning survey, I have put this together. So I want to thank those who volunteered, and I want to apologize right up front if I don't get it correct. The idea of this is to hopefully have it be educational and kind of a review, and to show how these documents actually work out in practical terms. We have Judy and Bob, 62 and 63. Is 62 and 63 years old old?
No.
No. Really young, I mean, that is really young. I'm 62. I'm beginning to believe that nobody is old unless they're over 100. So, but what, according to psychologists and et cetera, is that we really don't start thinking about distribution of our estate until we're past our 70s. And up until 70, we are in the accumulation stage still, trying to get ready for retirement or for thinking about distributing. When I was 20, that the difference between thinking that what was old at that time, I remember it was anybody over 30, wasn't it? Was old. So But accumulation is occurring all the way up to the age of 70 for most individuals. Both are in good health. Why do we care what kind of health these folks are in?
You're going to spend a lot of money towards the end. It's not going to be back.
Okay, as far as expenses are concerned, so for some planning purposes, why else do we kind of want to know as to what their state of health is? Maybe how quick or rush the estate planning documents needed to be completed. That's probably a good reason. Another reason is that most spouses, don't they put each other in as successor trustee? So if one spouse is not doing health-wise, do you really want to put the burden on them to be the successor trustee or serve as one of the people in these roles if they're not in good health? So we always ask, what is your health like? They have a realistic assessment. They're retired. And they are U.S. citizens. Why do we care if somebody is a U.S. citizen when we're talking about estate planning? Yeah, it's having to do with taxes, and also that you, in order to take advantage of some of the tax laws, it requires a special kind of a trust for those individuals who are not U.S. citizens. So we always ask if somebody is a U.S. citizen. They have 4 children, 1 disabled and 2 stepchildren. So it sounds like we have a second marriage. Children age range from 17, 21, 40, and 41. That's a range. They own an RV, and I would live in it, and have it parked in Ensenada, Mexico, and do not vacation in another state for an extended period of time. Why do we care whether or not they vacation in another state?
Different laws and different states.
Yeah, every state has their own laws. And one of the things I'm always concerned about is the Advanced Health Care Directive. If you're in another state for an extended period of time, get an Advanced Health Care Directive. It's free. Usually every hospital has one in that particular state, and hopefully someone locally there to be named as an agent. If you stay for an extended vacation, if you're just traveling, don't be concerned. But if you have a spot that you're going to on a regular basis, I would make sure that that is taken care of. They have no long-term care insurance and are not concerned about it. They did not disclose their annual income, and one has started to use their Social Security. The estate net worth is about $3 million, consisting of bonds of $1.5 million. Which way do you think bond values are going in the next year to 3 years? Down, right? So for 1.5, half of their net worth is in one asset class. So that would be a little caution check mark. Say maybe we need to do something. Well, they have stocks of $800,000. They have rentals of $280,000. They have a cash of $500,000. A boat, $150,000. Home, $700,000. Life insurance. We count the death benefit into their net worth statement for a taxable estate. So when we're adding up our net worth, we look at life insurance, the death benefit, not the cash value. And they have IRAs, and they have 2 major concerns. It sure seems like the total is above $3 million, isn't it? And what I find that most of the individuals have been doing this now for a number of years. Most individuals get their net worth wrong. It sounds simple, but even when I was at Long Beach State University, most of the university professors, we'd sit there for 2 to 3 hours to come up with a number. And most individuals get it wrong. Is there a problem with that? Well, it's not major, only in the sense it's just kind of unrealistic if you're looking at a specific number and it's not correct. So, and a lot of planning occurs because of it. Anyway, they have two major concerns: a care for a disabled child, and how best to assure spouse's children or his stepchildren. See, kind of life is getting in the way of the planning, right? Because we have 4 children, we got stepchildren, maybe a second spouse here. So what do we do? In addition, they want to reduce income taxes. I've never heard somebody say they want to increase income taxes. They want to diversify their investment assets and reduce estate taxes. Do they owe any possibility in the next 2 years of having to pay any estate taxes? No, none. So that's should be a relief to hear. Well, how many people in the room, just for curiosity, out of the, you've heard all the speakers, how many believe it's going to stay at 5 million? So raise your hand. Only a few of you, huh? God, pessimist. I think it will, personally. Yeah, I think it's going to be so confusing because the gifting is also at 5 million. And so those individuals who gift today, their 5 million, what are they going to do? I mean, it just seems like, I mean, worse things have happened as far as government is concerned, but I would just be so confusing. By the way, nobody knows what's going to happen after 2 years. We know that the law states that it'll revert back to 1 million. So they have to do something in order to keep it at 5. And that's going to be a problem. Let's see. The present allocation is 35% in equity and 65% in fixed income. I would probably, if I were looking at their finances, I would probably go maybe a 60% equity, 40% fixed income, but we don't know exactly what kind of risk tolerances they have, and not sure of their present income either. They recently received a $1.5 million as an inheritance. Not bad, but they have a lot of money sitting in cash. And so to me, it would seem like they're kind of confused as to what their next step ought to be with that money. They indicated the heirs are not capable of managing lump sum, and investment management should be recommended. They did not know how income distribution should be handled, and they have not copied their grant deeds or beneficiary forms. They said all their assets are titled in their living trust dated in 1996. Do you think they had a little different outlook in 1996 versus 2011 today? I would agree with that, you know, so they have to look at everything again. And they have 2 successor trustees. They have not communicated their desires with all potential trustees, not communicated their feelings about hospice care or their funeral desires, and the last conversation with their health care agent was back in 1999. The spouses had not talked about how each wanted to leave his or her share or how they wanted it to be managed. They more than likely have one trust. And so usually a husband and wife will have one living trust, and then when the first spouse dies, then the next spouse takes over the assets. I find that many spouses don't talk to one another and say, hey, if I die or something happens to me, hey, this is how I want the monies to be spent. Usually there's kind of hopefully some kind of understanding, but you may want to check that out. There are Cabana boys out there and some issues. In completing their family questionnaire, they stated the following: Both agreed responsibility of money is the most important value, and one added creativity. The greatest influence was their teachers. Both said personal experience, and the other said parents. When asked how they achieved their present financial status, both said personal effort, and one included inherited wealth. Their parents' financial history for one spouse was middle class, large family, quote, not much wealth, and the other was savvy in business. The parents affect today. Dad's investing in tax-free bonds and not gifting to kids during the life, and the other said frugality. So when asked how much they need to spend each year to live comfortably, one said $120,000 and the other said $75,000. So one likes to shop and the other one doesn't. Key values the children already have, the responsibility. Now, would you say if somebody is a spendthrift that the one child is responsible? It is hard to look at your own children objectively. It really is. One of the nice things about this form, there's different spots that you can answer different kinds of the same question. And they're inconsistent a lot of the times, and that is normal. When I answered it on the first page, I knew they had a problem. By the time we get to the second page, they've become responsible. So we change our minds somewhat, and we should allow ourselves to do so, because a lot of times, the number one reason why these documents don't get done is because we haven't decided yet as to what we're exactly going to do. This is a complex situation. It isn't easy. The children's ranges, having a child who's somewhat of a spendthrift, it's difficult. The key values the children already have is responsibility, importance of family, and the other spouse did not answer. Neither responded to how wealthy they wanted their children to be. How many in here, just for curiosity, want their kids to have over $2 million in assets? See, there you go. One. Just curious. Warren Buffett started kind of this out. He wanted each one of his children to have $500,000. This was about 10 or 15 years ago. And when asked why, he said, well, $500,000 would allow him to not be in the poorhouse, but at the same time would not allow him to quit work. So, but everybody's answer to that is a little different. I'm on page 2. One spouse said they did not know of any benefit to leaving substantial wealth to their children, but stated that the risk for their disabled daughter was losing her benefits, and stepson's spending don't align with the spouses. So in this particular case, we've got, what other document do you think that we need here? Special Needs Trust. Now, we don't know exactly what what the disabled daughter's problem is, but Medicare, Medi-Cal, SSI are all government benefit programs. Here in Orange County, for somebody who's disabled, you have the Orange County Regional Center. It's wonderful. But in order to maintain these, you have to be at a certain income bracket. So if their disabled daughter were to receive their inheritance, it would eliminate these benefits. So what we do is set up a special needs trust, and it says in the special needs trust that no shelter or food will be provided out of this trust, but everything else will. So they need to set up a special needs trust for this disabled daughter. What do we do about the stepson? That's a lot more difficult question to answer. We may want to do what they call a benefit trust. And what that means is that we don't give the monies outright to the individual. We'll give it to him in trust, and then in the trust language, we should write in there how we want the son to be supported. Do we want to have rigid language in here that says, you know, that giving specific instructions? Not sure. My advice would be is that here's where that personal letter comes in to the successor trustee and says, this is what I would like for my son. This is what I wish for him. I wish for him to get his self act under control. I wish for him to have a home. I wish for him to keep his spending under control. I would like to make sure that he has X amount of monies per year. We just don't know what's going to happen in the future. And so we want to give the successor trustee, whomever we name, some flexibility. Because literally, whoever is that successor trustee is almost going to be behaving like a parent, right? Trying to make decisions whether or not to write somebody else a check. So do you think one of the other kids would be a good trustee? No, I don't think so either. You want the other kids to be able to support and to help the family, not to become the enemy. Because whoever is going to be the trustee is going to be the enemy. So now the question becomes, who do you pick? And there's where either a private fiduciary comes in or a corporate fiduciary.
Can that be protected from creditors?
Yes. It can be protected from creditors because the parents have the ones that put it into trust. You can't put your own stuff in your own irrevocable trust, but you can do it as far as the parent is concerned. Okay? So there's probably a benefit trust in there. The same spouse was not, quote unquote, not very confident in children having the judgment and skills to manage and to use inherited wealth. The other spouse said pros of leaving substantial wealth was that they would have it better than me. I always think that, you know, that we want to make it better, but, you know, there's a certain ethic and value in work. And so making something better sometimes isn't the best. I would at least explore that with her or him, and wants them to have the dollar sooner than later, and is fairly confident the children will use the inherited wealth well. Do you see a little bit of conflict here? At one end, we've got somebody saying that we got a spendthrift issue, and then on the other hand, we got another spouse maybe saying that, hey, there is no problem here. I probably maybe recommend some counseling. When asked if public service and philanthropy was expected of the children, one spouse said unlikely, and the other said unsure. When asked if it matters, one said yes, and the other said to some extent. When asked if these values play an important role in their own lives, both said yes, and they feel a responsibility beyond family and have institutions that are important to them. Neither indicated any specific amount or percentage to philanthropy in their estate plan. I think they're way too young to even think of of that. Maybe down the road, I think they have to deal with these issues first. And I think once they deal with these issues, then they can start thinking about philanthropy. And they also have inherited wealth that they've got to deal with. It is not easy dealing once. I know it seems kind of crazy, but it's not easy to deal with sudden wealth. Lottery winners, I know I would be different if I won the lottery. But, I mean, all the stories you read about them, they're just absolutely miserable. And, having a difficult time dealing with it. They didn't grow up with money. They weren't used to money. Their parents are frugal. And we're just talking a little bit beforehand that we were saying before the program started, in doing these cases, it's amazing to me how the apple doesn't fall far from the apple tree, and as the older I get, I see myself more like my dad than I did 20 years ago. So, and I'm trying to change that. So, are there any questions regarding the estate plan? They need definitely the basic documents. They need a will, they need a durable power, they need an advanced health care directive, they need a living trust, they need to get their documents updated. 10 years probably is a little too long to take a look at that. They certainly want to talk about hospice care and funeral desires, just in the event. Sounds like they're going to be doing some traveling. Sounds like they've really got some issues to work out as to how they're going to deal with the children. And one is a stepchild. How do we deal with the stepchild issue if the, under the living trust? We already said that they needed a special needs trust. We also said that they may want to look at a benefit trust. How do they protect the child who is the non-parent? Remember the AB? We're not going to do it for tax reasons, but the spouse who dies, we're going to put the assets in the below ground trust or in the marital trust, and then this would go to, I'm just going to say, the stepchildren, and then the survivor's trust could go to the other two children. So it becomes a little complicated because we got an S&T trust. By the way, would you give the S&T trust, the special needs trust, the same amount of benefit as all the other 4 children? No? Why?
You want to make sure there's enough money.
Yeah. What I find with special needs trust is that most individuals underfund them. It requires a separate trustee. It requires that, the tax returns are there. It requires special management because you don't know what the liquidity is. And so people think, well, the daughter is on government benefits programs, and so she doesn't need as much as anyone else. What we can always do is that name as beneficiaries the other 3 kids. So that if there is any money left over in the special needs trust, it can go to them. But I see it mostly that it gets underfunded. And so that would be a little bit of an issue. I think the most difficult thing is to get a good successor trustee here who will raise. Do we ever grow up once we're spendthrift? I don't know. Get competent financial and legal help when you're separating these assets into the A and the B. For example, let's say that in the home, I'm just using this as an example. Do you want the home to be split half into the B and half into the A? No. You want the B to have some growth potential, but you also want to be fair to the survivors. So there requires some discussion, you know, and most of the spouses go ahead and put their spouse as the successor. So, but you need some help. I mean, even I've been in this business quite a while, and I'll get the help of a CPA or an attorney, or the financial advisor, and discuss this entire area before we make decisions. Because there's emotional decisions here, there's financial, and there's tax considerations.
Does the IRS have to know about the split?
Yes. Yes, because this will now have its own separate tax ID number. Is there enough money in this state to take care of a special needs trust, a benefit trust? I think so. I think there's substantial sums of money here. For the special needs trust, in other words, if you break up the estate into 4 pieces, let's say their estate is $6 million today. Let's say they die, and see, these people are very young, 62 and 63. So, you know, to guesstimate as to how much they would have, but let's say, just for the math, they have $4 million left in their estate. I mean, I think $1 million in a S&T, or even a little bit less than that, and $1 million to each of the other 2 kids, to me that would seem to have they substantial wealth. I mean, how many individuals got left $1 million when they started out in their career? You know, it's like most of us have never received, you know, you were telling me that you gave your sons a choice of going to work or go to college, you know, and, there's a value there. And so sometimes I think the hardest part is having this wealth and trying to make that decision. Because if you don't have it, what decision do you have to make? So, and you want to try to do the best, and now they've got to come to terms. They're not together on the same page, whether or not the children, or especially the stepchild, whether or not there should be a special benefit trust for them. People do LegalZoom, and who knows if they went to an attorney. Not only that, but remember, they did this in 1996.
I did one way before that.
Yeah, but likely, you're absolutely right. I mean, if they went to an attorney, probably, that the pour-over will should have been done. But this is the information that they had given me. So, but they're in a whole new, and I would imagine at 62, 63, I bet you in another 10 years from now, they're going to think a lot differently than what they do today. Maybe. I mean, we do change our mind. And one of the things that I think we need to do is give ourselves permission to change our mind. Don't consider these documents to be inconcrete. They can be changed at any time. You can change your successor trustee. You can change your distributions. They're not set in stone. The problem is when you don't have these documents and something happens, now there's an issue. If we don't have that advanced health care directive, or we don't have that trustee, that successor trustee that we've talked to and said, hey, you're going to take care of me. What does long-term care mean? Daycare, activities of daily living, ambulate, can't button a shirt, can't bathe, and can't sometimes need assistance eating. Okay, that's what long-term care means. I think they have substantial wealth. I think they're probably, this is the kind of logic I would use. How much does a caregiver 24/7 cost today? Somewhere in that range, you know. What's the average period of time, at least today, that they know of for someone to, if they need long-term care, how long would they on average stay in? 7? 8? It's 3 years. They say that most of us over 65 will need 5 months or less. So the calculation that I would do is to say, let's take 70 times the average of 3 years, which is what? 210? Can they live with this number? In a state of 6 million today, 210,000. Okay, I would say the percentages, you know, this seems to be minor. Now, the problem is when if I told you $210,000 was minor charge, you probably all kind of take another deep breath. But percentage-wise, from their estate, it seems reasonable. So the problem with long-term care insurance is that those with a $5 million or more estate likely don't need the insurance. And then those with, you know, $500,000 or less don't need the insurance because they have the government benefits of Medi-Cal. If those individuals are 500,000 to 5 million in between, that's a more difficult decision because you got to look at cash flow, premium payments, and the thing of it is 40% of all individuals who have long-term care insurance drop it. So, because it gets too expensive.